Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on best practices in global training. As we just saw in a series of statistics and charts that went by, the global nature of business is accelerating, and frankly, so is the business of global training. Today, more and more companies are doing their training in more and more locations worldwide. My name is David Collins, and I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the Training Products Division here at the TRACOM Group. We've been in the business of interpersonal skills training and leadership development going back to the 1960s. In the last couple of years, we've seen an absolute explosion in the international part of our business serving global customers. We're best known for our social style model and our social style profiles. Each and every year, the percentage of our business that's driven from our profiles that come outside of the U.S. compared to domestically is increasing. In the not-too-distant future, we expect to see more profiles generated from outside the United States than inside the United States. It is this growing international demand and our work with a number of extremely large global training initiatives that has led us to create this webinar to share what we've learned and the experiences of several of our clients. So today we've got a lot to cover in our 55 minutes together. Our agenda includes a look at the challenges businesses face when delivering training on a global scale. Specifically, we are going to discuss 5 areas that can determine an organization's success or potentially lack thereof. We will look at some examples of global training from the perspective of our clients and resellers. We'll also talk about the benefits you can gain when you do, in fact, conduct your training on a global scale. And in the end, we'll finish with a Q&A from you, the participants. Now, while most companies rely on vendors for some of their training, some companies handle everything internally. The content of today's webinar addresses both scenarios. Today, I'll be joined by 2 colleagues from TRACOM. Dr. Casey Mulqueen is our Director of Research. He has helped numerous companies implement global training initiatives, and he's led the development and validation of our social style profile in multiple languages and cultures.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be with you today.
And we're also joined today by Sean Essex, who is our Director of Marketing. Sean will be reviewing your questions and monitoring our Q&A session at the end of the webinar today.
Thanks for joining us today. We have a really large turnout for this webinar, and we do want to make it interactive. You can submit questions during the webinar using the on-screen tools, or hold on to them and we'll take them at the end during our Q&A session. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as time permits. Next week, you will receive an email from us that will include resource materials from today's discussion, a copy of our best practices white paper, as well as links to some of the research that we talk about during this event. Let's get into our discussion of best practices in global training.
Thank you, Sean. Some of you might be attending this webinar because you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of global initiatives. I know that I have. And we've all probably felt the painful lessons that are almost always learned when you try to coordinate something on a worldwide scale. So today we're going to talk about ways to minimize some of the inherent difficulties of global training, but there are some very positive advantages when implementing a global training program. When working with our clients, some of the benefits that they've seen show that it's really an opportunity for organizations to institute and communicate a global culture and identity for the organization. In some circumstances, it allows them to create a common set of performance standards and expectations worldwide. And related to this, it leads to standardized, efficient processes that are transferable across locations. For organizations that are training for development purposes, it helps create a consistent and fair leadership development process worldwide. And finally, it provides a means for different locales to have input into the design and implementation of the training program. And this is important because it improves the likelihood of success at each location worldwide. The particular benefits of any training program are going to depend on its specific purposes, but these are some common advantages. And while these are attractive benefits for global businesses to aspire toward, of course, there are plenty of potential pitfalls. So let's look at those challenges. And for that, I'll send it back to David.
So with that foundation, let's look at the 5 key challenges, starting with organizational and structural issues. HR executives generally recognize the need to have high-quality, consistent global training. As with most global initiatives, the challenge of putting global training in practices is, in fact, a significant one. And with a background in training or HR, there's a tendency among executives to focus on the content and delivery with less attention to other areas. But best practices in global training go far beyond the training content and curriculum. A successful program requires coordination of multiple corporate functions and, of course, coordination with a lot of individual geographies. From a functional perspective, it's common for us to see involvement from the C-suite, as well as representatives from HR, legal, IT, finance, and also international operations. And let's not forget about compliance and also risk management, which will occasionally get involved in the process. If this sounds complex to you, bureaucratic and slow, you're right, it sure can be. But honestly, that's the reality of the situation many times when you get involved in global training initiatives. Even if you've aligned the priorities and preferences of the headquarters staff, you need to do the same in the various regions you're targeting, considering that the various operations are probably structured quite differently than the U.S. operation. If the initiative is being driven from corporate HR, do you have the authority or the influence to prioritize the program in the targeted geography? Who controls the different budgets? Will the existing technology in place support your strategy? Are there feet on the ground to make it work? And then, frankly, time zone differences offer a lot of challenges. Here in the last week alone, I've done calls in the middle of the night or very early in the morning at least 4 times in order to stay connected with some of our clients on a worldwide basis just to keep the flow of communication going.